Hello and welcome to another episode of MLB Round the Bases. I'm Jeremy Schooler. We have a lot to go over as MLB getting deep into the end of the second quarter of the season, heading into the All-Star break in a few weeks. And we know this because All-Star Game voting is underway, and we have a first update for All-Star Game voting as Vladimir Guerrero, who has just been absolutely dominating the American League, all sorts of stats, leading all MLB vote getters in votes for the All-Star Game with 858,000 votes, about 20,000 ahead of Ronald Acuna with 835,000 votes, followed by Mike Trout, who is currently hurt, and Fernando Tatis. So MLB stars across baseball represented, but Vladimir Guerrero at that top spot in the American League. He's played 63 games, 49 runs scored, 77 hits, 21 homers. That leads baseball. He is the only person in baseball with over 20 home runs, ahead of Fernando Tatis. Guerrero also 55 RBI, batting 344. I mean, nobody else with as many home runs as him is batting nearly that high as Vladimir Guerrero, the third best batting average in baseball, and his 21 home runs ahead of Jesse Winker and Nick Castellanos. Vladimir Guerrero also 450 OVP, 688 slugging. I mean, he's just dominating, and he has the Toronto Blue Jays, who are in one of the hardest divisions in baseball, firmly in contention for a playoff spot. The Blue Jays currently 33-30. They're 7.5 games out of the division lead. As I said, one of the hardest divisions in baseball, but they are ahead of the Yankees, who are in a disappointing fourth place. This is the only division in baseball with 4 teams over 500, as the Yankees are in fourth place at 33-32. And then the Jays at 33-30, the Red Sox at 39-27, and then the first place Tampa Bay Rays at 42-24, the best team in baseball. But Toronto has been in it all year because of Vladimir Guerrero, and they're getting George Springer back soon. But Toronto is 3 games back of the wild card. The wild card right now, Boston and Houston, but Cleveland, Toronto, and the Angels not far behind, and the Yankees. And then kind of that next tier of the teams that are really not going to contend in the American League this year: Seattle, Kansas City, Detroit, Minnesota, Texas, Baltimore. But the Blue Jays, firmly led by Vladimir Guerrero, along with, of course, Bo Bichette, George Springer coming back soon, Nate Pearson, their top prospect, their pitcher, who has come back from injury recently. The Blue Jays, just one of the more surprising teams in baseball. Probably the most surprising is the other way, the Twins, of how bad they are. The Twins are not supposed to be this bad, but are right down at the bottom of the division and among the bottom teams in the American League. And that kind of it doesn't seem like a slump. It seems like who they are at this point into the season. But the Blue Jays, with Vladimir Guerrero leading all MLB vote getters in the All-Star Game voting, followed by Ronald Acuna, as I said, in the American League or in the National League. Surprising is that Shohei Ohtani not up there. Of course, Shohei Ohtani just been breaking and meeting records that hadn't been touched since Babe Ruth all throughout the season, which he has done. And he is likely to start in the DH spot in the All-Star Game. What many people have said would be interesting to see is if Ohtani were to start at DH and pitch in the All-Star Game. That does seem unlikely, but certainly a possibility, as anything with him is. You really don't know where it's going to stop and what else we can get with Shohei Ohtani. But the All-Star Game coming up next month, of course, in Denver. And the thing is, with the fan voting, it's a bit tricky because, of course, it gets fans involved. It's fun, and the All-Star Game no longer means anything, specifically in that it used to mean home field advantage in the World Series, which it no longer does. But the fan voting can get a little tricky because the current standings in fan voting, as I said, Guerrero in first, followed by Jose Abreu and Yuli Gurriel. Makes sense. And Guerrero is going to start at first base in the All-Star Game. The majority of all votes have been for him for first base of the American League in the All-Star Game. But then you also have some guys like, Nick Madrigal, who's hurt right now, or in some cases just a popularity contest with players from bigger teams. Bogarts, Chris Bryant in the NL, who is listed at third base, but really could start anywhere because he does play 5 different positions. He's the only player in baseball in 20 years to play at least 10 games at 5 different positions by the All-Star break. Of course, for him, center, right, left, third, and first. So just needs to get those other 2 infield positions in. But some other leaders in the NL at second base, Ozzie Albies. In the AL, Marcus Semien. Third base, Rafael Devers and Chris Bryant. Shortstop, Xander Bogaerts and Fernando Tatis. And then in the outfield, in the American League, it's Mike Trout, Aaron Judge, Byron Buxton, who's also hurt. And Buxton was having an MVP caliber season, but unfortunately has only played about 27, 28 games before he went down with an injury. And his Twins have been one of the worst teams in baseball all year. In the NL, Ronald Acuna, Nick Castellanos, and Jesse Winker leading the way. And then at catcher, Salvador Perez in the American League, just missing all of the 2019 with Tommy John surgery, but he had played 5 straight All-Star games, started 5 straight All-Star games for the Royals. And starting 5 straight All-Star games at any position is amazing, but for Salvador Perez to do it as a catcher was really unbelievable. I mean, the only reason it stopped is because of his injury. But he holds a very steady lead ahead of Yasmani Grandal and Martin Maldonado. And then in the National League, it's Buster Posey. So Buster Posey and Salvador Perez, 2 of the best catchers of the past 10 years, both getting a bit older in age, but both holding firm leads in the catching rankings in the All-Star game voting. Posey ahead of Wilson Contreras and Yadier Molina. And then at DH, of course, just in the AL, Shohei Ohtani. And it's really not even a contest. I mean, he's going to start at DH in the All-Star game because he's either going to start at DH or pitcher, and I see it very likely he'll start at DH instead of having a pitcher. Instead of him starting a pitcher in the All-Star game. But in the American League for pitchers, I think perhaps a John Means or Carlos Rodon, Garrett Cole, Tyler Glasnow. I think it'll be Tyler Glasnow. I think he's the best choice to start the All-Star game. I think he has some of the best stuff in the American League, especially among starting pitchers. But it would probably come down to Glasnow or Cole. But there's a lot of good guys that can come in for a couple outs or even inning. Lance Lynn, Carlos Rodon, Kyle Gibson, Aaron Savall, Chris Bassett, Kikuchi. I mean, there's lots of guys from around the league. Whereas in the NL, it is less of a contest as, given that he's healthy, the NL All-Star game starter will be Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom has just been on fire. I mean, he is doing things that haven't been done in years. And he is the best ERA in baseball, and it's not close. 0.56 ahead of Kevin Gausman, who has a 1.43 ERA. I mean, Bob Gibson had the best ERA in baseball history at 1.12 for a full season. Jacob deGrom has exactly half that at 0.56. And it's not like it's only been a few starts. I mean, he's pitched 64 innings this year, started 10 games, has 1 complete game, a shutout. His batting average against is 121. He has a better batting average than the hitters who face him because Jacob deGrom has just been spectacular at the plate as well, batting 400 this year. He has more RBIs than runs allowed. It is probably the easiest start in the history of baseball is this year's NL All-Star game pitcher, Jacob deGrom, assuming he's healthy. But then lots of other guys, Max Scherzer will probably make it, Taijuan Walker, Trevor Rogers from Miami, Yu Darvish, Zach Wheeler, Marcus Stroman, Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw. There's lots of good NL options to pitch in the All-Star game at later points. Assuming deGrom is healthy, hopefully he will be able to and to start the game. Of course, the game is in Colorado this year, but the MLB made that change a few years ago that even despite the game being in an NL park, there will be a DH in the All-Star game. So unfortunately, we'll not get to see deGrom hit in the All-Star game. But always a fun thing to do is is to guess who we think the NL All-Star DH starter would be, because that one, of course, cannot be voted on. So it is kind of just up to whoever the manager is to who his best hitter is that isn't in the starting lineup. And for me right now, I think I might go with a guy like let's see, given the current status of the All-Star starters, Mookie Betts is, as of right now, not starting in the National League. In the outfield, it's Acuna, Castellanos, and Jesse Winker, all very deserving. 2 of the 3 outfielders from Cincinnati. followed by Mookie Betts and Juan Soto. I think either Mookie Betts or Juan Soto could be good options at DH in the All-Star game. Now moving on to a little bit other headlines. The Tampa Bay Rays, as I said, best team in baseball at this point. The Rays, White Sox, Giants, Dodgers, Astros rounding out the top five. And so that's, 4 different divisions represented, so it's a bit diverse there. Of course, the Giants and the Dodgers are always good when the two of them are really good for baseball, and especially this year when, the Giants were not supposed to be good at all. They're supposed to be the Dodgers running away with the division, along with, San Diego, maybe the Dodgers winning 105, the Padres winning close to 100, and then everyone else. And it's really been the opposite in that the Dodgers and Padres are behind the Giants at this point, 65 games into the season, nearly halfway through the season, and the Dodgers and Padres are still behind the Giants. Now it's a steady, it's only a few games, but with Colorado and Arizona being so terrible, Colorado with just 5 road wins on this season, Arizona also just 9. It's just, the Dodgers and Giants and Padres each have more wins either at home or on the road than the Diamondbacks do total. So it's just goes to show that division can be so top heavy, and we have 3 big dogs in the race in the NL West: the Giants, the Dodgers, and the Padres. Would love to see the Giants hold on to that lead throughout the season, or at least make it interesting, because the Dodgers and Padres do have more games remaining against Colorado and Arizona. But would love to see the Giants keep it interesting and stay in that NL West race throughout the season. The NL Central, another one that's close division race, tied up right now. Cubs and Brewers, both 11 games over 500, leading the division, kind of separating themselves more from Cincinnati and St. Louis, and of course Pittsburgh, one of the worst teams in the league. But Cubs and Brewers, and those are 2 teams that also, despite being big rivals in the same division, they have not played each other much this year. Coming up in a week or two, the Brewers will play each other again. They have a big week series in Milwaukee. And that'll be a lot to look forward to, because that series like those could end up deciding the NL Central. Both have big series this weekend too, this week as well, with the Cubs finishing off against the Cubs playing the Mets for 3 in New York, and then the Brewers also playing the Reds, who the Reds can jump right back into the division race if they can get a sweep against the Brewers. The NL East, the Mets, despite all of their injuries all season long, are still in first place. It just goes to show how weak the NL East is. As I said before, the AL East, 4 teams above 500. The NL East barely has 2. The Mets, 7 games up, and then the Phillies just 1 game above 500 after sweeping the Yankees in 2 this weekend in one of those kooky Saturday-Sunday 2-game series. Over to the AL, Oakland maintains their lead over Houston. I think pretty much all of baseball can agree that they would prefer the Astros not to win the division, really anyone else, but Oakland at 13 games up. And then the Angels are not out of it. The Angels are 1 game below 500, or 1 game above 500, 8-2 in their last 10. They have the best record in baseball in their last 10 games. And them and the A's at 8-2 in their last 10, by far the 2 best records in baseball, as opposed to Arizona, the opposite, 0-10. But the Angels not out of it yet, and certainly when they can get Trout back in a few weeks, if Rendon can start hitting, they can stay in it all year at a minimum. The Angels have made the playoffs once in Trout's career. They got swept that year by the Royals, and I think anyone who knows that for baseball, it would just be great to see Mike Trout back in the playoffs, especially Shohei Ohtani, Anthony Rendon, if they can get going, and even if they can just stay in it until the end of September, because usually the Angels have 85 losses by mid-September, and they're already out of it. Of course, the AL Central, as I mentioned, that is the biggest division lead in baseball right now at 5.5 games. And the division leads across baseball are 3 games over Tampa Bay over Boston, White Sox 5.5 over Cleveland, Oakland 2 over Houston, Mets 3 over Philadelphia, Cubs and Brewers tied, and then Giants 1 over LA. So White Sox stretching out this week with the biggest division lead in baseball at 5.5 games. And I was looking at the AL. I want to jump back to the All-Star game real quick in terms of who we think could win this All-Star game. Buxton, Trout, Judge, Guerrero, Semien, Bogarts, Devers, Perez, Ohtani on one end, and then Winker, Acuna, Castellanos, Bryant, Tatis, Albies, Muncy, Posey on the other end, plus Soto or Betts at DH. It does seem like the AL is the stronger lineup this year. The AL has dominated All-Star games for much of the past 10 or 15 years, and it does seem like that would continue into this year. The power rankings, we have one of the best series we're going to have all season this year. Usually I save this for the last segment of the show, but we just want to touch on that now real quick, is that I do the series to watch and the series you don't have to watch. Series you can kind of miss, like not too important across both leagues. This weekend we have the number 1 and number 2 best teams of baseball. The only two teams that have 40. The only teams with 41 wins across baseball. The Tampa Bay Rays going to the south side of Chicago to face the White Sox. Matchup of two aces today. 8 o'clock Eastern. Tyler Glasnow against Lance Lynn. Rays, White Sox. This is going to be a treat. 3-game series between the Rays and the White Sox, and there's two best. Also, really the series to watch this American League, and it totally makes sense because it's the two best teams in baseball. It might be the best series of the year. So in the American League today, this week's series to watch, Rays, White Sox, whereas series to miss in the American League, Twins, Mariners. That's going to be an ugly game. It's hard to believe that's the same league as Rays, White Sox, Twins, Mariners. That's, the Twins at 26 and 39, 15 games back, and the Mariners at 32 and 35, 8 games back, haven't made the playoffs in 21 years. That is a game you do not need to stay up for, and it is a good use of a 10-10 game. So I'd be shocked if any non-Twins or Mariners game fans on the East Coast watch this game. So Rays, White Sox, the series to watch in the American League this year. Twins, Mariners, the series to miss. Now moving over to the National League. The National League series to watch, or series to miss this week in the National League. That one would be Pirates Nationals. Unfortunately, as I said, that as a Nationals fan, the Nationals splitting with the Giants this weekend. The Nationals lost 2 games, allowing 3 total runs, which is very frustrating. The Nationals have one of the worst offenses in the league. In a third of Nationals games this year, they had been scoreless heading to the 7th inning. They're really not much to watch, and the Pirates are even worse, although the Pirates were expected to be. Pirates at 23 and 41. Tonight's matchup, John Lester versus JT Brubaker. Really not much to see there between the Pirates and the Nats. The NL series to watch this week. It was actually a close one. I was thinking about this, and it was a close one between Phillies Dodgers, which is in Los Angeles. A good cross-country battle. The Phillies coming off that sweep of the Yankees. The Dodgers starting to heat up a little bit as well. As the Dodgers 7-3 in their last 10, and they're, as I said, 1 game behind San Francisco. Philadelphia heating up a little bit as well. 30 going from under 500 to over 500 with the sweep this weekend against the Yankees, 7-3 in their last 10. So that was a good option, but I'm actually not going to go with the Phillies Dodgers series. I'm going to go with Cubs Mets. That's a battle of first place teams. David Peterson against Jake Arrieta tonight. Cubs Mets from Citi Field tonight. First Central. And I think the series of the week because the Cubs exactly tied with the Brewers. I mentioned that series they have coming up next week, Cubs-Brewers, but Cubs and Brewers tied for the division right now. Plus, this is a 4-game series, which really helps it a lot. That 4 straight at Citi Field, whereas the Phillies Dodgers is only a 3-game series. And we're gonna have some good matchups in this one. Cubs Mets tonight, as I said, Jake Arrieta against David Peterson. And for the rest of the week, the probable starters, Alec Mills and Taijuan Walker tomorrow, Kyle Hendricks and Marcus Stroman on Thursday. And then the Wednesday game, the 3rd game of the series, Jacob deGrom, after exiting his last start after 80 pitches, he dominated the Padres through allowed just 1 hit. Jacob deGrom against to-be-determined pitcher for Chicago. But this should be a great series all the way around. Arrieta, Peterson, Mills, Walker, deGrom to be determined, and then Hendricks, Stroman. So that's what we're looking for this week. 4 straight games, Cubs Mets. That is the series of the week, and this might be some of the strongest series we have all season. I mean, between Rays, White Sox in the AL, Cubs Mets in the NL series of the week, along with Phillies Dodgers. You have some strong series and some weak series. Also, Tigers, Royals, and Twins, Mariners. 2 pretty terrible series. Blue Jays, Red Sox as well. That's going to be a good one. After the Blue Jays hit 8 home runs at MLB, tying MLB record, hit 8 home runs in 1 game against the Red Sox recently. the Blue Jays chasing them in the wild card. But two games we cannot miss this week: Cubs Mets, or two series we cannot miss: Cubs Mets and Rays White Sox. Those are our series for the week. As teams across baseball, as we said, right around the 65 to 70 game mark. So closing in on halfway through the season in about a week or so. All-Star game coming up in 3 weeks, getting into the dog days. All stadiums, well, the majority of stadiums at full capacity, and hopefully the Toronto Blue Jays can go home and play at the Rogers Center in Toronto soon. Just playing at Solomon Field in Buffalo for the time being, but nearly all stadiums in baseball are at 100% capacity, and it is a sight to see. I went to a baseball game last week for the first time since before the pandemic, full capacity. It was spectacular. So we are coming back post-pandemic for sports, full capacity MLB stadiums as we head into the dog days. Going to be really great to see. Keep up with those series this week. The All-Star voting as well. Don't forget to vote for the All-Star teams as we have the All-Star game coming up in Denver in a month. Until then, I'm Jeremy Schooler for Zango TV and Spanglish Sports World. This is MLB Around the Bases, and we will see you next time.